Welcome back to Small Caps, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to 2023. It is going to be a year of excitement. Do you know what? This is a fabulous story. Why? Because I am talking to Mark Saxon. He is the Executive Director of, drumroll, ladies and gentlemen, ACDC Metals, back in black, literally listed on the ASX today. So he's been a very busy guy. But I said, Mark, please, I'm really interested in what they're doing. It's heavy mineral sands. It's rare earths. It's in Victoria. I want to find out more about, first of all, how did they get the name ACDC Metals? Because I love it. Back in black. Let's hope that's the mantra for the rest of 2023. Mark, great to see you. I know where you are at the moment. It's a bit warm.
Like Kerry, yes, I'm sitting here sweating a little bit, but that's all right. It's been a good day for us, and we're very happy to get listed, and one of the first companies to get up and going in 2023. So that's a real milestone for us, and big things ahead. We're very excited.
So put a comment below, ladies and gentlemen, and say Merry Christmas, because clearly Mark was working over Christmas and New Year. Mark, how did you get the name ACDC Metals? What a fabulous name.
Yeah, sure, and I'm sure I know that you speak to many companies, and coming up with company names is very hard. And so we kind of kicked it around the table amongst the people involved, and kind of had the name sort of drop on us from above with some good ideas. And I guess the company is very much focused on the metals for the energy transition, and the energy transition is about electrification. What are some of the things that you talk about? ACDC current, when you talk about electricity and metals. And so that's where it first came to us, I guess. But in addition, we noticed that one of the major ETFs that's investing in lithium and battery metals has the ticker of ACDC. And we thought, what a great association with that ETF, and a great way to get our name out into the market. And so as you said, it's very memorable. It's going to be sitting at the top of the list there somewhere. And when people look for the ETF, they'll also find our name. So I think that's great.
Very bloody clever, just quietly. Now, Mark, before we get into detail, this is the first time you and I have had a conversation. Tell us about ACDC Metals. What have you got? I briefly mentioned heavy mineral sands and rare earth, but why don't you give us, I guess, the overview of the company and what you're focused on?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And at the highest level, we've just completed the listing. We've just raised $8 million. The enterprise value for that is about 7 million. So a very small company starting off on its journey. And as part of that, I'd like to sort of give a particular shout out to Matt Horton and to Tamara Barr, two of the people that really got us across the line. The focus for the company, and really that's going to be the theme as we move ahead here, and we'll touch on it many times. But our focus is on mineral sands and on rare earths. It's a two-sided story. So for people who don't know mineral sands, they're a very major market around the world. Australia's a major producer, Africa's a major producer, a little bit in the US, a little bit in Europe. Mineral sands are the producers of the minerals zircon, rutile, ilmenite, and they supply into industrial markets for paints, for building products, for titanium that we use in metals and building, really, really important materials. But I guess sitting in the background, and one of the minor minerals that's also in mineral sands is a heavy mineral called monazite. And so monazite is a rare earth rich mineral. It contains about 60% rare earths. And so the business plan that we have in ACDC is to utilize that monazite and use that to extract the rare earths from the mineral sand mines, both from ACDC's mines, but from other ones in the world as well. We can be purchasers of that, and process that and extract the rare earths, and be a really cheap and cheerful producer of rare earths from mineral sand monazite.
Just go back a step, if you could. I didn't quite follow that. So monazite is what? Is that it's a rare earth?
No. So monazite is a mineral, and so the rare earths, when you consider them, are metals. So rare earths are a group of metals of 15 or 17, depending on the chemistry you apply. 17 different individual metals. Some of those metals have high value, some of them have low value, some have big markets, some have small markets. However, the metals themselves, when they exist in nature, they're sitting inside minerals. And so those minerals need to be processed. And so the work that ACDC is doing now, and the partners and the precursors to ACDC, which is a company called Medallion Resources, has worked out a way to very simply extract the rare earths from the mineral and turn it into saleable, marketable products that takes us through from a low value to a high value product, and that's really what ACDC will be focused on.
So, with that technology, is that patented to ACDC? Talk to us about how important is it as part of what you're doing?
Sure, and we kind of start on the longer part of the story here now, and one of the major shareholders that's in ACDC and one of the founding companies is a company out of Canada, a listed company called Medallion Resources, and so I was CEO of Medallion Resources until recently. So Medallion has been developing this process and looking for places to operate and to partners to provide the technology to. ACDC the group that was behind ACDC originally approached me when I was working as Medallion and said, how about we look at an installation in Eastern Australia? So a license has been transferred from Medallion Resources in Canada, exclusive use in Eastern Australia. Essentially everything except for Western Australia. So ACDC can use the Medallion technology and build one or more process facilities here in Eastern Australia. So there's some patents in part of the process stream, other parts are trade secrets. And so it's a combination of that. And so it's a combination of chemistry and engineering, and ACDC now has rights to exclusively use that information in Eastern Australia. And so that gives ACDC a really fast track record, a really fast sort of running track to be able to get into production in Australia, because it comes with all the knowledge. It comes with, we know what the input looks like, we know what the chemicals are needed, we know what the footprint looks like, we know the waste products, and that allows ACDC to sort of jump a number of steps when we talk about implementation of this process technology.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I was going to say, because there's not plenty, but there's a number of companies out there that are doing rare earths and have said, we've got rare earths here, there, and wherever.
Sure.
But one of the challenges is that processing of the rare earths themselves, and it can get complex. And are you suggesting that what you've got with this technology allows you to fast track it? Am I right in saying that? Or...
Yeah, and really the rare earth market is never an easy market. But I guess my experience, I'm a geologist by training, but had the good fortune to be involved in the discovery of a really major project in Sweden about 10 years ago. And that sort of taught me what to do and what not to do in the rare earth market. And so what we've done now with Medallion and with ACDC is to develop a fast track method, because when you look at most rare earth projects, they've got very complex mineralogy. They vary horizontally. They vary with weathering at depth. So it's very hard to develop a stable flow sheet. With mineral sand monazite, as we're doing with ACDC, the minerals have been washed around in the ocean for tens, if not hundreds of millions of years. And so the monazite is now a very simple and relatively pure product, very predictable. And so the work that was done by Medallion, we processed monazite from Australia, we processed some from Africa, we processed some from the US, and really all of it processed exactly the same. So we can have a really tight and well understood flow sheet. And so the fact that it's coming from these mineral sand deposits, it really allows a very tight and efficient flow sheet to be developed. And that's the work that Medallion has done to get us to this point. And that's where ACDC can really benefit, that a lot of the process risk has been taken out in Medallion's work.
Which I think makes you a little bit different. Mark, one of the things you mentioned is you're with Medallion Resources over in Canada, but you've also had a very long, track record with rare earths. And we'll come on to the heavy mineral sands part in a minute. But if I could just stick on this, what's your view on rare earths going forward? Because rare earths aren't that rare, are they? I mean, they are around, but I guess it's the trickiness is in the process. I guess the question for you is, what made Mark Saxon turn around and say, you know what, I'm going to leave Medallion Resources, get to Australia, set up ACDC?
Yeah, and that's a good question. And I guess, to sort of take that backwards-looking approach, then, my success and good fortune came through a discovery that I made in a company called Tasman Metals, which was a Canadian company, TSX listed. And so we lived the highs and lows of that last rare earth boom, which was, I guess, 2009 through to 2013. really gave myself and the group I work with, lots of understanding of that rare earth and critical metals market. And so when I crossed over into Medallion and now to ACDC, I guess the thing that I hark on is industrial relevance. So rare earths are industrial metals. And so when you go and speak to the customers, they don't care about geology, they don't care about grade, they don't care about all that stuff that we talk about as geologists. They care about how many tons of dysprosium can be delivered in a month's time, and the month after that, and the month after that, or NdPr, or all of those really the essential metals that are going to be going into if you're going to be building an Audi in Germany, whereabouts are the metals going to be coming from? And you've got to have that mapped out sort of a year or two in advance. And so what they want is industrial relevance. They want, we love the term critical materials, but the Germans hate it because they don't want things to be critical. They want things to be safe and secure. So by the work that Medallion has done, the work that ACDC is doing, then we're able to say, all right, we've got a deposit that we understand the processing, so we know how to get the metals out of the minerals. We can now start to talk about a really sort of tight timeline. We can understand the timelines that lie in front of us. It's not about trying to discover something, trying to build major infrastructure, trying to find customers, trying to develop a flow sheet. We're able to make sort of much more legitimate promises to customers because of how relatively simple our part of this business is. And to look at, I guess, at if there's a peer that we sort of aspire to is what Iluka is doing at Eneabba in Western Australia, and so they've had a stockpile of mineral sand monazite, exactly the same stuff that's on our properties in Victoria. They've had a stockpile that they've been building on for since 1975, I think it is. And now they're going back and they're processing that stockpile. Great business model, it'll do really well. But they're able now to go and speak to customers and say, okay, in this many months we're going to be in production and producing this much material. And that's what customers want. They don't want uncertainties. They want guarantees. So yeah, coming back, I suppose, to that point of rare earths aren't that rare. Yeah, absolutely true. Yeah, without a question, they're crustily abundant. They're not that rare in our environment. And you take a sample and in large parts of Brazil and Central Australia, you're going to be finding rare earths, but they're not really in a way that they can never be industrially relevant necessarily. So I think what we're doing is a very industrially relevant approach.
You mentioned timelines. Our audience out there, they're all investors looking at, those sort of things. And I think one of the things that you mentioned, I think it's almost like treating it like a business. You know what your timeline is. Can you share some of those timelines with us? Because I think that almost could make you quite unique out of all the companies out there.
Yeah. So I guess the way we've developed the business is that there's two sides to it. So in Victoria, we've got 4 different projects that are mineral sand projects. They've all had past drilling. They've had, in some cases, historical resources that we need to go back and obviously improve the knowledge and confirm what's there. But yeah, we know where to start drilling. So the discovery side is well in hand, and we've already started drilling, and we will be again very soon. So the discovery part is like, let's call it a normal mining project or a normal mineral sand project. And I guess, to emphasize, I guess the beauty of mineral sands is that we drill these are very deposits that are very close to surface. So we drill holes that are, say, averaging 40 meters depth. We drill this in air core, so it's much, much cheaper than diamond drilling. And these are very large deposits. So you're talking hundreds of millions of tons, and in some cases you measure mineral sands in billions of tons. You're not measuring small, complex deposits. So you can drill them out really quite aggressively. So that part goes ahead, and we're doing the discovery part. But again, we're now separating that, I guess, from what we call the MMP process, the Medallion Monazite process. So we're now we have an understanding where we can go and talk to local governments to do siting studies to say, all right, we need this amount of land, we need this distribution of chemicals, we need this number of people, we need this amount of energy. What is in your area to be able to support that nature of facility? So we're able to sort of separate those two stories together and give them their own lives. And I guess the other beauty that we have of by separating the stories is that the license that's been transferred from Medallion to ACDC, ACDC can purchase mineral sand monazite or monazite from anywhere in the world. It doesn't need to come from our own projects in Western Victoria. They can come from anywhere. So we can be buying monazite from Africa. We can be buying it from Madagascar, from India, from Brazil, wherever it's coming out of. We're able to be buying those materials, bringing it into Australia, doing the value add here, and then building that rare earth supply chain and the value add steps inside of Australia instead of allowing it to slip off somewhere else, like unfortunately Australia's done in the past. So we're then able to be the taker of a low value material and add the value in Australia, which is really exciting. And all of that material at the moment, it's on ships today. It's traveling from Africa to China as we speak. And so that monazite is already being traded around the world. Almost all of it's ending up in the Chinese market. There is absolutely no reason why some of that can't be diverted into an Australian market and into our process facility and add value here instead of somewhere else.
I think I really like this story. Do you know why? I'm always saying, why don't we add more value within Australia? So hats off to you, Mark. Fantastic. But talk to me about how you get to that, having that process facility. How complex is it to get that set up? Because there's monazite around the world. I'm certain you could probably be buying it and bringing it into Australia right now if you wanted to. So talk to us about where you sit. How does that work?
Yeah, sure. So there's a lot of monazite traded already in the world, and so my history with Medallion Resources means that I receive an email every second day that describes somebody who's got monazite to sell, and sometimes it's from major companies, sometimes it's let's call it secondary markets. So we know that material is moving around and it's all ending up in the Chinese market. So we understand that very clearly. For us and what we need to execute in Australia is so site selection and then some research and development on how we finalise and do some of the final engineering on the technology that Medallion has transferred to us. And so Medallion's done a lot of work and individual components. It's done all the chemistry. It's done a good bit of the engineering. We still need to bring that together into a final pilot plant. And that will be run at ANSTO in Australia when we have enough supporting information around it to provide that as a contract to them. It really needs that sort of final pilot plant as part of our R&D and design process. But we've already done an awful lot of work to understand. We understand the big one is the chemical profile and the waste profile. So we understand exactly if we receive a ton of monazite, we know exactly the reagents, the people, the power that are required to process that 1 ton of monazite, and we understand the profile of the waste that then comes outside that needs to go to storage or go to a secondary market. So the Medallion monazite process that we developed, particularly developed in Canada, it's a zero liquid waste process. So there's not a whole lot of waste to deal with, and really the beauty of the process is that whatever comes in, almost all of it is turned into products. So we produce a rare earth product. We can produce a uranium and thorium product. From the radioactive materials, and we also produce a phosphate product which goes into an agricultural market. So almost everything that comes in the door will end up as to a customer rather than sort of ending in waste, which is very exciting. And unfortunately, I usually carry with me a little bucket of sand to show what the brown sand looks like at the monazite sand. But monazite sand is 60% rare earths. So when you take the rare earths out of it, there's not all that much left to deal with. So if we look at some of the clay deposits and things that exist in the world, the monazite sand is 1,000 times higher grade than some of those clay deposits. So the footprints can be small. You can be very intensive with your chemicals because you're only using a very small amount per rare earth unit that you're producing. So that allows you to have a tiny footprint really for a mining project.
Whereabouts are these projects? Whereabouts? And actually, but just this might sound like a really dumb question, Mark, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I'm not a geologist. If Medallion Resources have got this process and they've done all the testing and they know how it works, etc., why do you need a pilot plant?
No, that's a great question, so most of the work that we did with Medallion was from it wasn't locally sourced, it wasn't Australian materials. It came from a project of, I won't name it, but it was outside of Australia. And so we want to make sure that the materials that we have inside of Australia, the ones that we're using from here, perfectly reflect what it is that we build in real life. So we don't want to have any gaps in our knowledge, I guess, as we move forward towards construction. We've done the work of Medallion was particularly focused on optimization of all the chemistry that's involved in the rare earths. Some of the work that we need to do in piloting is how we do the engineering to operate that chemistry. So there's still some innovation and areas that we need to work on in that. But they're very small hurdles in terms of what we need to do. And so, none of us, and when you talk to banks, when you talk to investors, no one moves ahead without a pilot plant, that's for sure.
Okay. Location. Talk to us about the location. Where are your projects? We've only been talking really about the rare earths element, because you've also got heavy mineral sands as well. Where are they? Where are you?
Yeah, and I must admit, like the conversation whenever we talk about ACDC, the sexy part, the interesting part is always rare earths. People love the rare earth story because of the criticality and the key role they play, I guess, in the energy transition. But the foundation of the company comes back to being mineral sands as well, and so that's a very major part of our story. So the mineral sand areas that we're working on are in let's call it Western Victoria. And as we spoke of, before we came online, it's called the Murray Basin. So the Murray Basin is essentially the area where a whole big inland sea used to cover the southeastern part of Australia. There was a big inland sea there, and the action of that sea, so the rocks are all weathering and breaking down, and the minerals end up in that inland sea. So that's deposited a very large area of heavy mineral sand deposits in this historic Murray Basin. And really we can talk about the western part of Victoria, the western part of New South Wales, the eastern part of South Australia is all part of that historic Murray Basin that existed, I think it's 50, 60 million years ago, is when that was being deposited. So now the water has retreated. When we drive out there today, it's sheep paddocks and it's crops. It's broadacre farming. There's a lot of other mineral sand exploration happening in those regions. We're not the first people to be out there doing it. So in fact, the whole region, the Murray Basin, was really drilled out and discovered by, at the time it was called CRA, it's now Rio Tinto, did all of the historic work, and really they just drove along roadsides and just drilled a hole every kilometre apart looking for these deposits in the 1980s. So we're now the fortunate beneficiaries of that work and that data. And so we were able to pick up that data and have the knowledge of where the deposits are understood to be. And so we need to go back now and do extra drilling on roadside verges, and then we cross over into the paddocks and do detailed drilling to go through the normal resource process of inferred, indicated and measured. And
look, we don't have a lot more time.
Geographically we're talking if people who understand that part of the world, we're talking Swan Hill to Horsham kind of way. Where we have a number of other competitors that are doing similar work and trying to develop projects, and where there's been production of mineral sands in the past.
We don't have a lot of time left, but I've got a few more questions I just want to ask you before we get into a wrap-up, if you like. First of all, how did you get your hands on these particular projects? Because if they're great, and that's what our audience wants to know, the audience wants to know, well, how good are these projects? If they were that great, how'd you get your hands on them? Because you've just...
Yeah, sure. And that's a great question and probably worthy of every company, I would say. And I'll give a shout out to our chairman there, which is a fellow by the name of Andrew Shearer. And Andrew's
Andrew.
A very well-known geologist and business guy around Melbourne. And Andrew, I guess his major claim to fame was Andromeda, which was a 2050 bagger or something like that from his involvement to a good discovery in South Australia. So Andrew, very well connected in the mining industry in Melbourne and knows who owns projects and who's doing what. And so Andrew came together with two owners of mineral sand, or in fact 3 owners of mineral sand projects through his network. all of which had been, we've got extensive drilling in the past, and Andrew worked really hard to aggregate those three companies with the mineral sand assets into one under the ACDC umbrella, and that's all come together now. And in that process, Andrew and I started talking about the medallion monazite process. And I've got a decent profile in rare earths, and certainly Medallion's got a good profile in monazite, and we were able to sort of talk about the transfer of technology and Medallion coming in as a business partner for ACDC. And over 12 months we managed to lock it all together and bring it into one package. And so our assets are within and adjacent to known resources, along strike from known resources, have loads of historic drilling. And so we're very confident as we move forward now and starting drilling almost immediately to be able to go from exploration target stage or early stage to JORC stage extremely quickly.
I think it's going to be a very exciting time for you. We are running out of time. I'll get you to come back again once you've settled, because as I say, today's listing day, and I know you've got a very, very busy afternoon. Let's just wrap this up, if you like. It's a little bit different, not just because of the monocyte process, but I also think, kudos Andrew Shearer, who I do know, good on you, Andrew, of getting a group of companies together and going, right, this is now ACDC Metals, and not least, I love the name. 3 reasons why people out there, our investors, should be sitting up and taking notice of ACDC Metals. Right.
Sure,
now.
Absolutely. And thank you. And before we wrap up there, I'll say thank you to the whole team that's got us to this point. And IPOs aren't easy, and we've really managed to pull a great story together. So in terms of the 3 points, I suppose, that make us a very investable story. So I would say number one is the sector that we're in, and we're in the energy transition space and looking for the materials to support that energy transition, and so that. We can run through the list of lithium and cobalt and copper, but rare earths stands out as a really key place to invest. And so the supply security of rare earths, almost entirely Chinese at the moment. The rest of the world needs alternatives from supply security and ESG reasons. And so we're at the forefront of that. That was my number one. Number two, we're out there drilling at the moment on projects that have had a lot of historic drilling in the past. We're not drilling blind. We know where we should be drilling. We've got access to a whole range of projects over big areas, and we're very confident we'll be moving into from a pre-resource into resource stage very soon. So that's always a great milestone for a company to achieve. And I guess number 3 is to come back to the medallion monazite process, to have exclusive use of a well-developed technology that takes materials from being low value to very high value, from being commodity stage into specialty stage. That's a really rare thing in a mining company, and so that's a really unique selling point for us that nobody else has, and I think that's going to put us in great standing as we move forward.
Mark, this has been a fascinating conversation. I've been learning as you've been talking, thinking, oh, that's interesting. I love the fact that you're going to be upscaling, I guess, the rare earths here within Australia. Nothing better, in my opinion. And it sounds to me like you've got a lot of work now. I really do hope you can get 1 or 2 days off after now that you've just listed. But in the meantime, please make sure you come back. Keep us up to date. As I said right at the start in the past, ladies and gentlemen, please do your own research. Pick up the phone if you want to speak to Mark. The ASX ticker code is ADC, not ACDC, ADC. So that's ACDC Metals. Mark Saxon, Executive Director, thanks so much for joining me on Small Caps today.
Super. Thanks, Kerry. Look forward to chatting soon and give me the updates.